The first time my family called me selfish, I almost believed them. I had spent 12 years trying to prove I wasn't. Then, on a rainy Saturday morning in October, my 12-year-old daughter came running down the stairs holding an old envelope in both hands. "Mom," she said, breathless, "why does Grandma have a letter with your name on it?" I looked at the envelope, and everything inside me went cold. My mother's handwriting was on the front. To Emily, not my daughter Emily, me. My hand started shaking before I even touched it, because my mother had been dead for 3 years, and the letter had been written almost 10 years before she died. I stared at my daughter. "Where did you find this?" "In Grandma's old attic box," she said. I wasn't snooping. Dad asked me to find the Christmas decorations. I took the envelope from her. It wasn't sealed. Someone had opened it. Someone had read it, and someone had deliberately put it back where nobody would find it. I knew that before I read a single word. For most of my adult life, my family had told one simple story about me. Emily Carter was difficult. Emily was dramatic. Emily was jealous of her younger sister. Emily didn't appreciate what her parents had done for her. Emily abandoned the family. And eventually, I became the person everyone blamed whenever something went wrong. At Thanksgiving, if my sister Rachel and I argued, it was my fault. At Christmas, if my mother cried, it was because I had hurt her. When my father needed help with his business, I was selfish for refusing. When my sister lost her job, I was supposed to help financially. When my parents sold the house, I was accused of not caring about the family. I spent years apologizing for things I didn't understand. That morning, standing in my daughter's bedroom with my mother's old letter in my hands, I suddenly wondered something I'd been too afraid to ask. What if I had never been the problem? I unfolded the paper. The first line made my heart stop. "Emily, if you are reading this, then I failed to tell you the truth while I was alive." I sat down on the edge of my daughter's bed. My daughter looked at me. "Mom," I couldn't answer. I kept reading. "Your father will tell you that I wanted the house sold." My breathing changed. "He will tell you that I wanted everything divided equally." I looked at the next sentence. "That is not true. For 12 years, I had believed I was the daughter who had ruined her family. Now, my dead mother was telling me that the story I'd lived with might have been a lie, and I had no idea how much worse the truth was going to become. I grew up in a small town outside Columbus, Ohio. My parents, Daniel and Margaret Carter, weren't rich. But when I was little, I thought we were the happiest family in America. My father owned a small auto repair shop. My mother worked at a local elementary school, and I had a younger sister, Rachel, who was 4 years behind me. Rachel was beautiful. She was outgoing. People noticed her. I was quieter. I liked books, drawing, and fixing things. If something broke in our house, I wanted to know why. My father used to laugh and say, "Emily, you're going to be an engineer someday." Rachel wanted to be a singer. Mom encouraged her. Dad encouraged her. Everybody encouraged her. And I didn't mind. At least I didn't think I did. Then, when I was 17, everything changed. My father lost his biggest business contract. The repair shop started falling behind. Bills piled up. My parents began fighting. And one night, I heard my father say something I'll never forget. "We can't keep paying for Rachel's college." My mother answered quietly, "She can't lose her dream." I was standing outside their bedroom. I didn't know what to do. So I made a decision no 17-year-old should have to make. I got a job, then another. I worked after school, weekends, and during summer. I saved money for college. I didn't ask my parents for anything. Instead, I helped pay the electric bill, then groceries, then part of Rachel's tuition. I told myself it was temporary. It wasn't. By the time I was 23, I was working full-time and still helping my family. Rachel graduated without student debt. I was proud of her, but something inside me had changed. Because whenever I needed something, the answer was always the same. "Emily, you're strong. Emily can handle it. Emily understands." I became the daughter who could survive anything, and people slowly stopped noticing that I was tired. Then I met Mark. Mark was kind. He listened. He never asked me to save him. We married when I was 28. A year later, our daughter Lily was born. For the first time, I had a family of my own. I thought maybe things would finally become normal, but my family didn't like that I had started saying no. When Dad asked me for money, I said I couldn't. When Rachel asked me to co-sign a loan, I refused. When Mom asked me to babysit Lily so Rachel could go on vacation, I said I already had plans. That was when the accusations started. "You've changed," Mom told me. "No," I said. "I've just stopped being available every time someone needs something." She looked at me like I'd committed a crime. A few months later, Rachel told everyone I was jealous of her. I wasn't, but nobody asked me. They simply believed her. Then my father announced that the family house was being sold. I was shocked. "That house belongs to Mom too," I said. Dad looked at me. "Your mother agreed." I called Mom later. She sounded nervous. "I didn't want this, Emily." "Then why did Dad say you agreed?" There was a long silence. Finally, she said, "Sometimes it's easier to agree than to fight." I didn't understand what she meant. Not then. A few months later, Mom died, and at the funeral my father stood beside my sister. They cried together. I stood several feet away. I felt like an outsider at my own mother's funeral. Afterward, Dad handed me a box. "Your mother wanted you to have this." I opened it. Inside were photographs. Nothing else, no letter, no explanation, just photographs. For 3 years, I wondered why, until Lily found that envelope. I continued reading the letter. My mother had written it in January of 2017, almost a decade ago. "Emily, I know you think your father and Rachel have always been honest with you." My eyes filled with tears. "They haven't." I stopped reading. My daughter sat beside me. "Mom, what does it say?" "I don't know yet." But I did. Some part of me already knew. I kept reading. My mother explained that the family house had never been meant to belong solely to my father. Years earlier, when my grandmother died, she had left the property to my mother. But there was a condition. My mother could live there for the rest of her life. After that, the property was supposed to be divided between both daughters, me and Rachel. The house had been worth almost $480,000. But my father had wanted to sell it. He wanted to use the money to rescue his business. My mother had refused. That's when he began pressuring her. Then came the sentence that made my stomach turn. "Your father told me that if I didn't sign the papers, he would tell you that I was the reason the family was falling apart." I covered my mouth. For years, I'd thought Mom had betrayed me. She hadn't. She had been afraid. The letter continued. "Rachel knows about the house." I stared at that sentence. Rachel knew. My sister had known, and she'd said nothing. Then my mother wrote, "I begged Rachel to tell you. She promised she would." She never did. Instead, Rachel had watched me lose contact with my family. She had watched me carry the blame. She had watched Dad sell the property. And she had stayed silent. I kept reading. My mother's handwriting became messier near the end. "Emily, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I taught you to be strong when what you needed was for someone to stand beside you." That sentence broke me. Because my whole life, I had mistaken being strong for being okay. I cried, not the quiet kind of crying. I mean the kind where your chest hurts and you can't catch your breath. Lily wrapped her arms around me. "Mom, Grandma didn't hate you." I looked at my daughter. "No," I wiped my face. "She didn't." Lily looked at the letter. "Then who did?" I didn't answer, because I knew. But knowing was different from proving it. The letter ended with one final sentence. "There is one person who has the original papers. Ask your father where he put the blue file." The blue file. I remembered it. When I was 23, I had seen my father carrying a blue folder into his office. I never knew what was inside. I called my father. He answered after 3 rings. "Emily." "Dad, I found Mom's letter." Silence, not surprise. Fear, that was the first thing I noticed. Then he said, "What letter?" I closed my eyes. "The one Mom wrote to me." Another silence. Finally, he said, "You shouldn't have gone through her things." I didn't. "Then who did?" "Lily found it." He exhaled. "Emily, your mother wasn't well toward the end." I knew that sentence. It was the sentence people used when they wanted you to doubt someone. "She was sick," he continued. "She didn't always know what she was saying." I looked at the letter in my hand. Dad, she wrote it years before she died. He didn't answer. I asked, "Where's the blue file?" The phone went completely silent. Then my father said something I'll never forget. "You need to let the past stay buried." And he hung up. 2 days later, I received a text from Rachel. "We need to talk." I almost laughed. After 3 years of barely speaking to me, my sister suddenly wanted to talk. I replied, "About what?" Her response came immediately. "You know what? Dad told me you found Mom's letter." So Dad had already called her. I wrote, "Yes." She replied, "Please don't make this ugly." That sentence told me everything. She wasn't afraid of what I might do. She was afraid of what I might discover. We met at a coffee shop. Rachel arrived 20 minutes late. She looked older than I remembered. She sat across from me. "Emily, Dad says you think he stole the house." I didn't say that. "You don't have to." I put a copy of Mom's letter on the table. Rachel looked at it. Her face changed. Not shock, recognition. "I noticed." "You knew," I said. She looked away. "I knew Mom was upset." "No," I leaned closer. "You knew about the property." She said nothing. "You knew it was supposed to be divided between us." Her eyes filled with tears. "Emily, you knew." Finally, she whispered, "Yes." The word landed harder than any accusation. I sat back. "Why?" She started crying. "Dad said the business was going to close." "So?" "He said we'd lose everything." "You mean he would lose everything?" She looked at me. "He was our father. And I was your sister." Rachel lowered her head. I was scared. I laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. "You were scared, so you let everyone believe I was the selfish daughter?" I didn't know what to do. "You could have told me the truth." I was 24. So was I. She cried harder. Then she said something that changed the entire conversation. "Dad didn't just sell the house." I froze. "What do you mean?" Rachel reached into her purse. She pulled out a small flash drive. "There's something else." I stared at it. "What is that?" "Dad's business records." I didn't understand. Rachel explained that years ago, their father had transferred money from the family property into his business. But the business hadn't been failing. At least, not completely. He had used some of the money to pay off personal debts. Then he had blamed the financial problems on me. I felt sick. "Why are you telling me now?" Rachel looked at me. "Because Dad is trying to sell the remaining business assets. And he's moving everything into my name." I stared at her. "Why?" "So that if anyone comes after him legally, the assets won't technically belong to him." For the first time in years, my sister and I looked at each other without anger. We looked scared, together. Rachel whispered, "I think Dad has been lying to both of us." I picked up the flash drive. "What do you want me to do?" She took a breath. "Find out the truth." That night, Mark and I sat at our kitchen table. Lily was asleep upstairs. I told him everything. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he reached across the table and took my hand. "You don't have to fight your family alone," he said. I looked at him. "I don't want revenge." "I know. I just want the truth," he nodded. "Then go get it." The next morning, I contacted an attorney. We reviewed the documents. The original property records showed exactly what Mom had described. The house had belonged to her. The sale had been complicated. There were signatures, transfers, financial documents, and one signature that mattered most, my mother's, but there was a problem. The signature appeared legitimate. The attorney looked at me. "Your mother signed this?" "I don't know," he pointed to the date. "She was in the hospital that week." My heart stopped. My mother had been too sick to leave the hospital, but someone had signed the papers. The attorney requested the hospital records. 3 days later, we found something. My mother had been hospitalized on the exact date the property documents were signed. She hadn't left her room, but the documents had been notarized at a bank 20 miles away. That meant one thing: the signature had been forged. Suddenly, everything changed. This wasn't just a family argument anymore. This was fraud. My father had built an entire story around that lie. He had told everyone Mom wanted the house sold. He had told everyone I was angry because I wanted more money. He had told Rachel that he was protecting the family. And I had spent years believing him, but there was still one question. Why had Mom never exposed him? The answer came from a second document. My attorney found a note attached to the original property file. It was written by my mother. She had been afraid that if she exposed my father while he was struggling with his health and business, the family would collapse. So she waited. She planned to tell me, but she died before she could. That was the part that hurt the most. She had been trying to protect everybody, and in doing so, she had left me alone with the blame. My father eventually agreed to meet. We sat in his living room. Rachel was there. My attorney was there. Dad looked at me. "You've always wanted to make me the villain." I said nothing. He looked at Rachel. "And now she's turned you against me?" Rachel shook her head. "No, Dad." He stared at her. "I didn't turn against you." She put the flash drive on the table. "I finally stopped lying for you." Dad's face changed. For the first time I saw fear. I placed Mom's letter beside it. "You told me Mom wanted the house sold." He didn't answer. "You told everyone I was jealous." Nothing. "You told Rachel the business was failing." Silence. Then he said, "I did what I had to do." Those words broke something inside me. Not because they surprised me, because they confirmed everything. "You stole from your own family." He looked at me. "I was trying to save us." "No," my voice was calm. "You were trying to save yourself." Dad looked down. Rachel started crying. Then he said, "Your mother was going to leave me." I froze. He continued. "She said she was going to change the will." I understood. He hadn't been protecting the family. He had been protecting his place in it. He had been terrified of losing control. So he created a story, and everyone believed it, except Mom, and eventually me. The legal process took months. The property could not simply be returned. The house had already changed hands, but the financial records were enough to establish what had happened. My father eventually agreed to a settlement. Rachel refused to take the money. She told me, "I don't want anything that came from lying to you." I looked at my sister. For years, I had imagined confronting her. I thought I'd feel powerful. Instead, I just felt sad. Because she had lost years with me too. I told her, "I don't want you to spend the rest of your life punishing yourself." She cried. "I don't know how to fix this." I answered honestly. "You can't fix 10 years in one conversation." She nodded. "But you can stop lying today." And she did. 6 months later, I went back to my mother's house. The house was empty now. The new owners had renovated most of it. But they let me walk through one afternoon. I stood in the kitchen where my mother used to make pancakes on Sunday mornings. I remembered being 8 years old. Rachel was sitting at the table. Dad was reading the newspaper. Mom was laughing. For a moment, I could almost hear them. Then Lily walked into the kitchen. She was carrying the same wooden box where she'd found the letter. "Mom?" "Yeah." "Are you sad?" I smiled. "A little. Because of Grandma." "Yeah." She sat beside me. Then she asked, "Do you hate Grandpa?" I thought about it. "No." She looked surprised. "Why not?" "Because hate would mean I want him to suffer." "And you don't?" I shook my head. "I just don't want him to hurt anyone anymore." Lily was quiet. Then she said, "That's better." I laughed. "You're 12. How do you know that?" She shrugged. "Because Grandma left you a letter?" I smiled. She was right. My mother hadn't left me money. She hadn't left me a house. She hadn't left me some grand inheritance. She left me the truth. And the truth gave me something I'd never had before, permission to stop apologizing. I stopped trying to convince people that I wasn't selfish. I stopped explaining why I couldn't save everyone. I stopped chasing people who had already decided to misunderstand me. And most importantly, I stopped teaching my daughter that being strong meant suffering quietly. One night, Lily was doing homework at the kitchen table. She looked up and asked, "Mom, if someone you love hurts you, do you have to forgive them?" I thought about my mother, about Rachel, about my father. "No," I said. She waited. "You can forgive someone when you're ready, but forgiveness doesn't mean you have to give them access to you again." She nodded. "Then what's the point of forgiveness?" I smiled. "So they don't get to live inside your heart forever." She went back to her homework. I looked out the window. For years, I had thought my family had taken something from me. My childhood, my confidence, my trust. Maybe they had, but they hadn't taken everything. Because I still had my daughter. I still had my husband. I still had the ability to build something healthier, and I still had a choice. I could spend the rest of my life proving my family wrong, or I could simply live a life that no longer needed their approval. I chose the second one. Rachel and I slowly rebuilt our relationship. Not overnight, not perfectly. There were uncomfortable conversations. There were days when old wounds opened again. But for the first time, we were honest. My father became distant. I don't know whether he'll ever fully admit what he did. Maybe he won't. Some people would rather protect the version of themselves they've invented than face the person they've become. And I've accepted that, because I finally understand something my mother tried to tell me in that letter. Sometimes the truth doesn't arrive to destroy your family. Sometimes it arrives to free you from the role you were forced to play inside it. For years, I was the difficult daughter, the selfish sister, the ungrateful child. The problem, but I wasn't. I was just the person who finally asked, why am I always the one who has to understand everyone else? And that question changed my life. The last thing my mother wrote to me was this: don't spend your life trying to prove that you deserve to be loved. I keep that sentence in my wallet. And every time I feel guilty for saying no, I read it again. Because now I know something I wish I'd known when I was 17. You can love your family without sacrificing yourself for them. You can forgive someone without trusting them again. You can walk away without being cruel. And sometimes the person everyone calls selfish is simply the person who finally learned that her life belongs to her. That rainy Saturday morning, my daughter found a letter in an attic. She thought she had found an old piece of paper. She had actually found the truth. And the truth didn't give me my old family back. It gave me something better. It gave me my life back.